Hey everyone, welcome back to another Web Dev Junkie video. My name is Cody Seibert, and in this video I'm going to show you how to build a to-do list using the MERN stack. So if you don't know what the MERN stack is, it's an acronym that stands for Mongo, Express, React, and Node. And that's just one of many technology stacks you can use to build different websites or web applications. So that's what we're going to be doing. And before we dive into that, I want to give a shout out to my awesome wife who designed and ordered me a t-shirt for my channel. So if you notice here, I'm wearing a shirt that says Web Dev Junkie, and at the bottom it says Code is my crack. And on the back it has a HTTP, and then in layman's terms a definition that says, I think it says the way, or the agreement of how data is sent between one computer to the other over the internet. I'll show that here. So I really like this shirt, so thank you so much, Tina, for making it for me and buying it for me. And I'll probably be wearing this for my future videos. So if you are interested in getting a shirt like this to support my channel, I may make one and put it up here. Just leave me a comment if you're interested, and I'll actually start doing that. But let's just go ahead and dive into this tutorial now. Alright, so this is the application we're going to be building. We have basically a really basic to-do list application using the MERN stack. You have the ability to register users and log in. So if you go to register, you can type in like Sam and a password and click register, and that will basically create a user account in Mongo for you, and you can start adding to-do items like finish this tutorial, clean the room, make my bed, stuff like that. And then you can go through and click on your to-do list items, and as you finish your to-do items you can go and filter and show the completed ones or the uncompleted ones. And again, this is all user based, so if I log in as a different user such as Cody, notice that he has a different list of items that he's completed and created. And that is the gist of what we're going to be building in this tutorial. So if this is something you find interesting, if you don't mind the ugly stylings of this page, then I would definitely stick around, because we're going to be doing a lot of like authentication using basic auth, or a hacky basic auth, and MongoDB and a couple of other cool things. So be sure to stick around if you want to learn more about making something in React. So on the right here, I have a really basic high-level overview diagram of what we're trying to build. And you see here on the left, we have a blue circle that is representing our UI that we're going to be using React to build out. And that is going to communicate with a REST API, this purple circle, which is using Express to kind of build out as well, which is going to connect to a MongoDB database, which is already running on my machine right now. So you could just go to the MongoDB site and download it and install it. But this is what we're going to be building out. So we might have 4 endpoints. We'll have the ability to register new users, log in those users, get all the to-dos that are associated with that user, and then post your to-dos or update your to-dos. And the UI is just going to be simple. I mean, most of everyone knows what a to-do list application is. It's usually just a list of to-dos that you can add in. You could edit them, edit the names of them, click a checkbox if they're done, and then maybe filter out the ones that are done. So that's what we're going to be building. And on the left over here, we have a create React app skeleton already created. So I use npx create React app. I create a React app, and I did install a couple of other libraries. So the first library I installed was React Router, and that is so that we can do routing inside of a React app. And we have a server file which I created, which is just hosting a really basic Express server. So we have an Express server running at port 4000, and it returns hello world when you hit it. So that is the project structure, and let's just go ahead and get started. So if we look at the first thing that we're trying to do, let's try to register a user. So a user should be able to see a register form, type in an email and a password, or username and password, click on register, and that's going to basically create a new user in our database and allow us to further log in later on. And that might also, you know what, let me just stop there. That's what we're going to do. So let's start building with a registration form. So if I go to my Explorer over here, I'm going to make a new folder called components. I don't remember what the structure is. I think React people do components and then something else for like pages or something. I could do that. I don't know. You know, I'll just do pages. How about that? So pages, components are something that are shared. So pages, I'm going to do register. So we're trying to make a register page, right? So it would make sense to have a register page. So I'll just create out a React functional component here that says register in it. So nothing too special for right now. And what I'm doing this for is I just want to first verify that I can go to my React router. So if I go and add that to React router, if I go to app.js, we already have React router installed. And down here we have the router, and then we have a switch statement, and then we have route components. So if you don't know how React router works, you have to have this format. And then for every unique URL path that you want to route to a different component, you just add it here. So I'm going to add a new one, and I'm going to say register is our path, and then that is going to basically load in a register component here. Alright, so I could hit that up here if I go to register now, and it shows our, it doesn't show anything because I think you have to put exact on here. It makes sense to put exact, otherwise you might do fuzzy matching. So now I have a register page I can go to, and then I can go back to the welcome page here if I wanted to. So it would be nice on the welcome page if we, I might pull this out to a welcome component. So let's also make a welcome component. Sorry, kind of jumping around here. So I'm going to make a new page called welcome, or you could call it dashboard or whatever you want to call it. And that is just going to have an H1 that says welcome. And it may have something else that we're going to add in a second, but we need to make sure we auto import this. So let me auto import that. Alright, so we have a welcome page and a register page. Super easy to set up. What I want to do is I want to add a link on a link on our welcome page that allows us to click on to go to our register page. So down underneath welcome, let's just add a link. And this is a React router component link, so you need to make sure you import it from React router DOM. And then I'm going to go ahead and put register, and then the link, this is like what the href is going to say inside of it. Is going to say register. So now if I click this button, it takes me to my register page, and I can go back and forth. Okay, so that's just a really basic example of how React router works, and it's kind of easy to get going. So all right, the next step is we want to be able to type in like a username and password and click a register button. So let's go back to the register page and let's start working on that. So it would make sense to have a form since we're like inputting data and then submitting it somewhere. So I'm going to add a form element with some inputs. So the first input is going to be I'll say username. And the second input is going to be the password. And in terms of UX, it's better to use labels instead of placeholders. Just heads up. And then we'll have a button that says register. I just woke up, so if I clear my throat a lot, I apologize. Alright, so let's go to the register page, and we have a form that has a username, password, and register, and it would make sense if we had an H1 that says register here, or something to let the user know that you're on a register page. Alright. So at this point, when someone types in the username and password, we want to keep track of what they typed in. So let's use some state here and keep track of that stuff, and then probably add a click listener to register that we can do a HTTP request to a backend. So let us bring in a use hook called, let's bring in a hook called use effect. And that is going to be an empty string as a default. And we're going to say username and set username here. Alright. And we want to make sure that when someone types in and changes the input value of this input, we're going to call onChange and make sure we set that. So onChange, call set username of e.target.value. Go ahead and save that. And this is complaining about some stuff, so let's fix that. So my linter set up to like pretty much crash the app if you're defining stuff that's not used. So let us get rid of that for right now. What's it complaining about? Object is not iterable. Okay. I'm sorry, not use effect. Oh gosh, use state. Yo, it's too early. I'm sorry, man. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. So maybe it wasn't complaining about that. It was complaining because I was using use effect instead of use state. We're trying to store a state variable inside our component, and I need to drink more coffee because I'm not awoke yet. Haven't woken up. Ah, man. All right. Second thing is I want to keep track of the password when the user types in. So I'm going to say onChange for this one. And I'm going to have another state variable called password. So let's go ahead and say password. Let's do a set password. And let's just call set password when someone types into the password field. So this is pretty straightforward. And just to verify that it works, if you see here, I have my React Components tab open in Chrome. And if I click on, what can I click on? There should be a way to go to my register component here. Oh, that's all I need to do. I just expand this. And you have all of this stuff here, but down here at the bottom, we have register. And we want to pull this up and see what the state is. So if I type in and say my name is Cody and then password 1234556, notice that the state hooks are updated as I type in. So that kind of verified for us that these things are working. This is all set up correctly. Another way you can do it if you don't want to install this plugin is just literally you could do console logs, or you could say username and you could say password and just kind of interpolate those out. So as you type them in, you should see those print out here. Just different ways to test that stuff is working before you start building out too much functionality. So where are we at? We are trying to register. One thing I noticed is that when you typed into the password input though, it didn't star anything out. So I'm gonna say type password on that. So as I type, it starred out. So you don't want people looking over your shoulder in the public library seeing what your passwords are. So let's comment that out. All right, so the next step, when they click on the register button, we need to do something. So let's just say on click, call a method called register. And I'm going to go ahead and declare that method up here inside of our component, which is going to do, what's it going to do? It's going to basically use those two state variables to make an HTTP request to a backend. So let's just go here and say, using the fetch library, we can say fetch, and we want to do a post request to an endpoint. So I'm going to say do a fetch to //localhost 4000. I think that's what my REST API is running on. Yep. And we want to basically hit a register endpoint. And we need to make sure that we pass in a couple of things in the header. So the first thing is the, I think you can do this. And we can say content. I might have to look this up. Let's see, fetch post request. It's always better just to look it up than go off of memory, because memory is always faulty and you don't want to waste time doing stuff that you know is not right. So first of all, we're doing a post request, so we need to make sure method is set to post. Over here for headers, we want content type JSON or application/JSON, and then we could pass some body. So let's say JSON.stringify, and we want to pass in username and password. Alright, so at this point, if we click on that button, we should do an HTTP request to the backend, but I think we're going to have to set up cores. So let's just try something really quick. Let's just do it. And we see down here we did make is that the one that, let's see. Oh, I know why. So it just kind of, when you have a button in a form and you click it, it's going to refresh your page, or basically redirect your page to a new URL. So what you need to do is actually add an on submit here. And we need to basically call register here instead. So down here on click, we don't want to call register. We could just add type of submit. And then when someone presses enter on your form or clicks on the button, it's going to call onSubmit. So up here we can pass in E, and we want to make sure we say e.prevent default, or else the page is going to reload like it just did. Alright, so hopefully that works. Let's see. Alright, so it did the request, but it failed. And if you get errors in your network tab, it's always good to check to see what's up here so you can see if something printed to the console. And something did, and it said it's been blocked by cores. So this is because I have not installed cores yet. So let's install that. So there's a plugin for the Express library we're using to enable cores. And cores is basically something you set on your server to allow your client to access URLs that don't match the same URL. So if you notice here, we have localhost 3000, and we're trying to access something at localhost 4000. So it gets blocked, and this is a security feature of browsers. So we need to make sure we just add cores. So I installed the cores plugin, and I'm going to just go ahead and use it. So down here we can say app.use cores. That's all you got to do. It's super simple to set up. And there's more stuff you can configure inside of here. You can pass different options, but for a little prototype that we're working on, you just pass it what I did. And now, when you try to do a register, let's go to the network tab and let us minimize this. If you see here, it says 404 not found. So we're not getting a cores issue anymore. We're actually getting a real 404. And that is because our register endpoint doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and try to add that. So instead of doing a default get, I'm going to change this to a post. So if you're new to Express, basically you can define new endpoints by doing app.get or post or delete or patch. So this is the HTTP method that you're trying to allow the client to send, and this is the endpoint. So instead of slash, we want to do register. And then now we should be able to click on that register button and get back a response. Make sure you click. So when you're doing a post request and some other methods, typically there's two requests sent. There's an options, which is sent to the server to kind of get back information about, like, okay, what does this endpoint expect in my headers? What does it expect, etc. And then you actually do the post request. So if you are ever trying to debug and you see that you have two register calls, make sure that you look here and make sure that you're looking at the post, because that is kind of what's going to have the response in it. So you see here, response says hello world. All right. So now we want the backend to basically take that username and password. So I could just say const username password and grab that from rec.body. And we could just echo that back out just to verify that this is working. So echo it back out, click on register, and we get an exception because I think syn has to take a string. So I'm going to say res.json instead. Try it again. And what is it complaining about? Oh, okay. So another thing I forgot to set up is by default, this rec.body is going to be a string. So if I were to console log this out, it's just going to be a JSON string that we need to actually do like json.parse. Actually, it's undefined. So there's probably a way to get that payload I'm sending in, but the easiest way, honestly, is to use a plugin for parsing that. So I can say app.use express.json. I think that's how you do it. And now when I click register, we get back the username and password that we echoed in. Alright, so we keep hitting little bugs along the way. And the good thing about when you're starting up a new project, you're going to hit these bugs with like you making your first endpoints and you making your first routes. But now you've solved those issues, so it's really easy to just copy and paste and kind of follow the pattern that you've already done. So the more bugs you hit in the beginning, you'll stop hitting them later on. Anyway, let us just go ahead and delete some of this stuff. Alright, so what we're trying to do, if we go back to this diagram, we want to save that username to MongoDB. So let us try doing that. So in Mongo, I have to look up the Mongo documentation. And I think there's a library called Mongoose that we could use. So let's just go ahead and install that. So npm install save Mongoose. And let's look at their getting started guide. So if you install Mongoose, like we are doing now, we can then import it. So let's go ahead and import it up here. And we want to connect to a locally running MongoDB database. So if I go over here, I could say mongoose.connect, and that will try to connect to our local database that we haven't created. So let's call this to-do. I don't know if this will work. It might crash because we haven't created a to-do database. And then down here it says you can check when you're actually like connected to the database. You can do something like this. So I'm going to do that, get the connection, and then on an error we're going to print out the error. And then down here we're going to have an event listener of when we actually connected, we want to host our REST API. So kind of moving some code around, and basically I just don't want to start the Express service until I know I've connected to my database. And with that, we are getting some deprecation warnings. Use unified topology. So I don't know what this is, but I'm just going to add it in because it's complaining that I don't have it. A good developer would look that up, but I'm not a good developer, so let's just keep moving on. All right, so we have Mongoose set up, and what we want to do is we want to start making a schema. And a schema is basically just like a little class that allows you to define what your models are going to have. So a model is like a collection of data. So for example, a user model could have a username and password, and you want to create a schema that encapsulates that definition, and then you can create new users and save them or delete them and stuff like that. So let's copy this schema here, and we could just post it right here at the very top for right now, but we can refactor this in a second. But I'm going to call this user schema. Uh-oh, deleted too much. User schema, and that is going to have a name and a password for right now. And we want to create a new user model. So after they create the schema, you can create a user model. Make sure that you do this, and I'll pass in the user schema. So you do mongoose.model, you pass in a unique identifier, so user in our case, and then you pass in your schema, and then you can actually use this user model throughout your code if you wanted to create new users and stuff like that. So when someone registers, we want to take that username and password, and we want to create a new user object. So new const user is equal to new user, and we want to pass in username and password. And we could simply just do a user.save for right now. Or maybe it's user.create. I think it's create. Guess we'll find out. I might have to go to the guide or something and look. So I think I can go to models. Is there a create method? Model.create. Yeah, so you can do model.create, and I think this will throw an exception if you try to create the same user twice. So we could handle that in just a second, but I'm going to just go ahead and say message success instead. And we probably want to do an await on that. I think this can be an async function. So I'm going to do async here, and now we can do await on user.create. Let's just try it out, see if it works. I don't know if I did everything correct. Let's close this, go back. I'm going to type in Cody 1 2 3 4 5 6, click register. And now that we're actually messing with the backend, it's good to have your terminal open. It says user create is not a function. Okay, so you can't do user.create. And I think the reason is because I created a new user here, so I think I actually need to do user.save. I think you have the ability to say this, user.create, and pass it that. So we could try that. Let's see. We could try doing that. Let's see if that works. I haven't used Mongoose in so long, so I don't know what I'm doing, honestly. All right, so it did register, I think. We got back a success message. And now, just to kind of show you, I should be able to go to my Mongo client. I could show DBs, I could use to-do, and then I could probably type in help because I don't know what the commands are. Show collections. So show collections should show us all the collections we have, and then we can say db.users.find. Type that in, and we do get back a user. Okay, so that user was stored to Mongo, and I didn't explain this. This is a shell. So there's a shell for MongoDB called Mongo, and when you run it, you can actually connect to your database and start doing queries and try to see if your data exists. And there might be a UI you can use for Mongo. I haven't taken the time to look for one, but I'm sure there is one that exists. But if you notice here, our user does exist, and it was given a unique ID here. So if I were to try to... Okay, so it doesn't have username in it. If you notice here, it's missing username. So we should probably rename this to username so it stores the correct thing here. And I'm going to try to do another request here. And now if we do a find, we get back username Cody, password of 123456. So it's there, we have it there, and we could probably clean this up somehow. I have to figure out how to do that, but anyway, our user is stored into Mongo. So we completed the first flow of this, and now if someone tries to create that user again, I think it should throw an exception. I guess not. I guess it just creates that same user over and over again. So that is probably something we need to fix. Okay, so if we go back to our server code, we want to first check if the user exists. So we could probably do a query first. So let's go back to our Mongo documentation. And we want to basically do a find one, or find by ID. No, let's do a find one. All right, so first we're going to check by saying find one user that has the username that was passed into the request. And then we could say if this exists, in fact, I think you might need to do like execute. Yeah, I think you need to do .exec at the end. I'm not too sure. Let's try it out. So if user, then, oh my gosh, why can't this keyboard type? We want to basically throw an exception and return an error to the user. So I'm going to say res.status is a 400 or 500, and then I'll say res.json message invalid registration information. How about that? You know, just for now, I can say user already exists. That's kind of a security issue. You don't want to tell the people hitting your API that users exist, because then they can start guessing to figure out what users. You want to just basically return a generic error, and then basically return. Okay, so if there already is a user, we don't need to create another one. Otherwise, create the user and send back a success message. Let's try that. Let's see if that works. So click register. We get back a 500 error. It says user already exists, and if I change it to Cody 2, click register, then it works. So we have a register endpoint and all that registration stuff working. And we could probably tweak it a little bit more to make it a little bit cleaner, but I think we are at a good stopping point. All right, so the next step is once we actually register a new user in the UI, we probably want to redirect the user to a dashboard or something like that. So let's just go down here and figure out how we can do that. So on our register component, when our fetch request is done, we want to first keep track of username and password. We could do that in just a second, but we also want to attach a promise chain to this. So when we're done doing a fetch, we want to redirect. And then also if we have an error, we should probably print it out. So I'm going to say a then and a catch. I think this is how you do it with fetch. So if there's an error, let's just go ahead and print out some type of error message here. So in order to do that, we're going to need some more state. So I'm going to say error and set error. So if there's any error, I'm just going to say set error and error occurred. Super generic, good enough. And then if there was an error, we should, above the form, just print it out. So if there is an error, then we can say render out let's see, and error has occurred. You know, I'm gonna make this a boolean instead. So we're gonna say is error and set is error. And then I'll make it up to the actual component itself to choose what it should print out for an error. So set is error true, and we want to make sure we reset that. Let's go down here. So is error, then print out an error has occurred. So if I try to register with Cody and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again, it should crash. So we get back an error here. It says the user already exists, but it might not be getting to this catch statement. So let's log this out. We are here. Yeah, it's not getting to the catch. So catch doesn't work for, I guess, fetch. So let's figure that out. Fetch, catching HTTP errors. You probably actually have to do like .then, get the JSON and get the status code. Fetch.catch, handling failed HTTP responses. Okay, so yeah, this is saying that you have to do something like this. Let's see if he does something cleaner. Handle errors. Hey, that's pretty cool. I guess I'll do that. I'm just going to take that code for right now, and I'm going to convert it to ES6 fat arrow, and then I'm going to basically use that first. So fetch, I could say .then, .then, and run handle errors first, and then that should give us some error text. So error, and we can print that out here. Let's see if this works. So log in with a user that's already created, and we get back, we are here, error, internal server error, which is what we're throwing up here. Response.status text. So I think traditionally when you have an issue, you don't want to send back JSON, you want to send back just a message. Maybe, I don't know, it's up to you. It's kind of up to your discretion of what you want to send back. So now when we register and we get back user already exists, and we're still getting back an internal server error. So let us check to see what response.status text is. So internal server error. So that is the actual status text, but we probably want to get back the body. I don't know how you do that. Let's just see if we can do body here. It's a guessing game at this point. Sometimes it's easier to guess at stuff. Throw error, response status text. Let's see, fetch. There's a way to get back. Maybe it's just JSON again. Let's see, what methods are on fetch? We have JSON, obviously. No, I think I could probably just do .json again. So I'll just do this and see what happens. It's a promise. So when we do a catch, we're getting back a promise. But really, should probably be awaiting on it and do async here. This is just turning into a mess. I don't know. Unexpected token. Well, let's see what's going on. So all I want to do is return the error that we got back. And you know what? I'm just going to go back to the server and undo what I did. I don't know fetch that well, but I'm sure there's a way to get back like what we're trying to do. So object got back an error. So error.message. I'm just trying to print out that message. That's all I'm trying to do, y'all. And for some reason, it's still printing out object. So let's print out what's error. And it should have like, this should be an object with one, dude, what the heck? Alright, we're gonna figure this out. I'm not giving up until I figure this out. It's an empty object for some reason, but we got back user already exists. So I'm just gonna say const message is equal to response.json, and that should give us back the message, and then we should throw the error. So I don't know why that's not working. Alright, so this is strange. It prints out the full object here, and then we throw an error here, which should have message, which should be caught down here. Then we stringify it, or not stringify it, when we when you stringify it, it's an empty object for some reason. So I think it's just the fact that this probably takes in a string, like you have to pass in a string. So I am just going to instead just do this, and I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and that is just gonna print out error here. User already exists. Okay, that achieved what I'm trying to do. This wasn't even that important, but sometimes I get caught up in things and I just don't want to move on until I figure them out. So sorry if I just wasted y'all's time, but at least we learned some cool stuff. So if you wanted to do something with that error, like print it in the UI, you could. Like if the server said a user already exists, it might be useful to check to see what type of error you got back and print that out of here. And since we've already done all that work, let's just do that, whatever. So I'm gonna say set error. I'm gonna go ahead and make that an empty string, and I'm gonna say set error is equal to error. And the whole reason we did all this is just because we want to print out the error if there is one. So Cody 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the whole thing crashes. Objects are not valid as a React child. Okay. I don't know what that means. Does it think this is an object? It probably does. So I think you need to do error.message because this is an actual exception object, and we just want the string. So I'm gonna do that. There we go, finally. I did it. We are printing out user already exists, and it would be nice if we had some red styling on this. So let's just go ahead and wrap this in a div or span or something. Style, I could do color is red. I think that's how you do it. Let's see if this works. there we go. I'm doing inline styles. Probably not good, but hey, I'm trying to move on. All right, so if you register with a new user and everything worked fine, we want to redirect to a new page. That's the original thing we're trying to work on. So let us go over here and see if we can dynamically change the route. So I think there's a hook called use history that you can use. So let's just go ahead and pull that in. So if I say const history is equal to use history, I make sure I import that, and we get that up here. We can then change the history dynamically inside of our register then statement. Okay, so if everything worked fine, we need to go to the home page. Simple as that. Let's see if this works. So if I were to register with a brand new user and password, click register, we went back to the home page. So awesome. So the second thing I want to work on is the ability to log in. So let's say we're already registered. You know, let me not do that. Let's work on hiding and showing the register button if we've already logged in and registered. So we need to keep track of the username and password and pull that up to a higher level. So we could do, I think, probably context here. We could probably pull in some context so that our router and all the sub-children are aware of the username and password. So let's just go ahead and do that. So let's make sure I can remember off the top of my head how you do this. So I think you can import something called, you know, I don't think you have to import anything. Let's just do here const credentials context is equal to react.create context. Gonna equal, let's just do null for right now. And we can wrap all this in a provider so that we have access to that context. So provider, and I think there's a way to set the value here. So the value we want to set here could be some state. So I'm gonna go ahead and just say use state, and I want the credentials set credentials equals use state. That's going to be equal to null. You know, I don't think we need to pass the default for here. So we're going to create a context, and then we are going to create some state at the very top of our app. And we want the ability for everything else in the app to be able to change the credentials or get the credentials. So for value, what we could do here is we should be able to pass in those two things, I think. You know what, I'm just gonna say credentials state. How about that? So now for our value, it's just gonna be equal to that array, and then we should be able to access the setter everywhere else. Okay, so I hope this works. We'll figure this out. So now in the welcome page, let's try to print out what the username is. So if I go to welcome, we should have access to that credentials provider, but we need to first export it. So export const credentials context, go to welcome, and we want to say import that. So import credentials context from /app. And then if you're not used to using hooks or using the use context hook, we could say use context, bring in that hook, we pass it in our context object, and then we'll have access to that array. So I could say username. So let's print out the username here. So welcome username, and see what happens. Let me make sure this is working. So if I type in this, all right. So a quick way to verify it is let's just go ahead and pass in a username, hello, password 1 2 3 4 5 6, and we want to make sure that we are grabbing the username, or sorry, the credentials. Credentials, man, this word's hard to type for me. And that's what we want to print out here. So hello. All right, so whatever we've set inside this state, we can access inside of our subcomponents if we just import that context and start rendering out. So let's just go ahead and set that back equal to an empty object, maybe. And what we want to do is basically, no, actually I'm going to set this to null, and then we can dynamically render that out. So if credentials is provided and we have a username, render that out. So as we're registering, what we want to do is basically set those. So instead of having them stored here, well, I guess we could store them here, but what we want to do is we could just import that context like we did in the welcome page. So I'm going to go ahead and import that here. I'm going to go ahead and go back and import it at the very top of this file. And make sure you auto import use context. And what we want to do is we want to make sure we set those credentials. So set credentials when we've successfully logged in. So down here we could say then. So after we've hit the endpoint, we get back a good response. We could say set credentials. We could pass in username, and we could pass in password. All right, so let's just give this a shot, and then also probably hide this register button if we're already logged in. So if I go back to welcome, we don't need to show this when we are, we only need to show this when we're not logged in. So let's just go ahead and put that in a conditional. All right, let's just step through this and see what happens. So register, Cody, 5, 6, and then type in some stuff. Click register. We got redirected to the welcome page. We're printing out Cody 5, 6, and that register button is gone. So now we have that state, the credentials kind of stored at a higher level context, and then we can use that throughout our application. Okay, so a lot of work so far. We've done a lot of stuff. Let's try to realign with what we're trying to do. I think registration is basically done. The next thing is we probably want the ability to log in. So unfortunately, if you refresh the page, you lose your state. The app doesn't think you're logged in, and that's because you're not. And we want a way for a user to log in again if the app refreshed. So let's just do a login page now. So if I go back over here, and let me just start fresh, clean slate. We got nothing. We want to make a new register page. So I'm gonna, or sorry, a new login page. And we want to make sure that is linked in to our welcome page. So same thing, if there's no credentials, then we want to basically be able to go to login, and we could basically print that out. So we got a login thing now. And if we go back to our app, why is my voice cracking? All right, if we go back to app here, and we could make a new route here, and we could say, when you go to /login, we basically want to show the login component that we created. So now if I click it, we go to login. So we want to do something very similar to the register page where we display, you know, I'm just going to copy and paste this because we're going to have a lot of the same logic. And I'm going to put that inside of my login component here. So let's change this to login. And let's just delete some stuff. All right, so instead of saying register here, we definitely want to say login. So if I scroll down to the H1, I'm going to say login. I want to, instead of when someone clicks the button, I want to click on, I want to call a login method. That's going to hit a login endpoint that we haven't created yet. We're still going to post username and password. We probably still want to handle errors and do the same stuff. And then basically set the credentials as well. A lot of this is going to be exactly the same as the registration, just with some different styling. Let's see what else we can change. So handle errors. Let's try to clean this up because we have some code that's duplicated in these two components. They're basically the exact same. Let me not name this JSX. Let's just JS. Keep it consistent. So for right now, we could basically just export handle errors so that we can import it from, or vice versa, import that from register. So let's just go to the register, and I'm going to import this from .login for right now. So now we can use that method and not have to duplicate code. And for our login component, there's probably ways we could dry this up. I'm not a big fan of drying up code unless like you're 100% sure it's not going to ever change. So the login page and the register page might change a little bit, so let's just not worry about that. So it's complaining that it can't find login.jsx. I don't know why it's complaining about that because I'm not importing a login.jsx. I don't know why it's thinking that. I mean, unfortunately, I did rename it. So I don't know if maybe my client needs to be reset. So let's just reset it. Reset my React script stuff, and hopefully that fixes the issue. If you ever run into issues that you don't know what are going on, sometimes it helps just to restart your servers. Especially if like you're making changes and stuff's not happening. So I guess if you were to name something JSX and then you rename it to JS, React does not know how to handle that. So you have to restart your server. So that sucks. But anyway, so now if I go to login page and I type in Cody in 123456 and click login, we get back a 404 not found, and that is because we haven't created that endpoint yet. So let's go ahead and create that endpoint. So if I load up my Express server, and I'm going to make a new endpoint here called login. Probably going to be very similar to register. So let's just go ahead and call it login instead. We get a username and password. And now this one, we find the user. If the user doesn't exist, we want to send back an error saying like 401, I think. And call and send back a message that says invalid login. Okay. I think it's 401. 401 status code. One is unauth and one is like, what is 403? Forbidden. Maybe 403 is better. I don't know which one we should be using. Could probably Google Stack Overflow and just find out. But so if you were to log in the endpoint, you find the username that the user has sent over the wire. If that user exists, then we're good. If the user doesn't exist, then you've basically provided an invalid login. So if the user doesn't exist, or user.password is not equal to the password sent in, we're just going to say invalid login. Otherwise, we're going to send back a success message. So let's try that out and see what happens. So click on login. We get back a 200 status code of success, and our front end is going to basically store that username and password inside of our context at a high level. And we're going to be using that username and password for basic authentication later on when we do requests to our to-dos endpoint and stuff like that. And I just want to make sure if I log in with a bad user, what happens. So let's just try it with a user that doesn't exist, and it seemed like it worked for some reason. So that's not good. So if there is no user, wait, I probably already created a user with that. There we go. Yeah, for some reason I created a user with ASDF. Alright, so we get invalid login. If we do Cody but have a bad password, we get back invalid login. If I type in the right password, it lets us in. Okay. Okay, so now that we have a login and a register page, and those are both seemingly working, we want to basically start building out the to-do stuff. So all of that stuff was all authentication, so that different users can log in and register and then keep track of their own to-do list items. Okay, so let's close all this stuff and try to figure out what we're doing. So on the actual welcome page, it makes sense to basically show the whole to-dos, I don't know, list and stuff if we are logged in successfully. So down here, I'm going to say if credentials is defined, then I'm going to go ahead and render out a component called to-dos. We haven't created one yet, so let's just go ahead and go back to pages. You know, and this isn't a page, this is a more of a component. So I'm going to say components, and then I will say todos.js. So I'll make sure I auto import that here. And now if I go back to my app, let's pin this over here. All right. So I'm gonna log in, Cody 123456, and at this point, we should be showing this. So something that's really annoying is that every time I save a component, my React app refreshes and I lose my login state. So what I'm going to do for just temporarily is I'm going to go ahead and go into where we created that state for the credentials, which I think was an app. And instead of use state null, I am just going to hard code this to username is Cody and password is 123456. Just so that when the app loads, I'm already logged in. And I'm going to just say to do temp remove this, just so I don't forget about it. So now we have React set up so that every time we refresh, we're just where we need to be. You can also store the credentials in local storage so that when the page refreshes, it just grabs the credentials from local storage, but we're not going to get into that. All right, so for a to-do list application, typically you have a list of checkboxes with labels next to them. Okay, so we could probably just do an input type is check. I think it's called checkbox maybe. Let's see if that works. All right, we got a checkbox. And typically you can do a label and say like, what is up? Let's see if this works. Other way around. All right, so we have an input box and a label, and we probably want to give this some type of ID of like checkbox 1, and label could be for checkbox 1, and I think this allows you to click on the label to mark your to-do as done. You know, so maybe we don't want to do that. I'd rather them actually click on the checkbox to mark it as done. So. All right, so let's just go ahead and try to create some functionality where we can add a new to-do list item. So what we could do is I'll add an input box of type text where someone can type in, and I'll do break here. And basically, if you enter in some text and you press enter or you press create or add, how about do add? How about that? All right, so let's do something like that. So when you type in here and you click add, we want to basically add in more of these dynamically. So first of all, it would make sense if these all came from an array, because we're going to have many different to-do list items that a user can enter in. So these two things could probably be coming from some type of state. So I'm going to say const to-dos set to-dos equals use states. Make sure you import that and set it equal to an empty array at first. And then here, we could basically map over the to-dos and render out that stuff. Let's see what this is complaining about. I think I have too many parentheses, maybe? This probably needs to be wrapped in a div or something. Let's just do that. Alright, so now it doesn't help us because we don't have anything. So let's add it to like a temp item here that says ID of 1 and text is what is up. What is up, dog? So now I could just basically say to do of text. So it says what is up, dog, and that is coming from the array. And React is going to complain that we're not supplying a key here. So I need to do key of to do ID. All right. You know, we could probably just use indexes here. I could just do that, see what happens. So instead of to do of ID, let's just do index, and that could be our unique key. Okay. So when we type in a to-do list item and we click add, we want to basically append a new to-do here. So we could make a do function that we're going to call. So on click, add to-do. So we're going to need an add to-do function. And what we're also going to need to do is, you know, I'm going to add this to a form with on submit, so that we can actually like press enter. And this is going to not have a click listener. I'm going to say type is submit. That's going to call add to do, and I'm going to say e.prevent default so it doesn't refresh the page. I think there's something wrong with my left parenthesis. It's like very sticky. It's hard to actually press down sometimes. Okay, so if I type in here and I press enter or click, it doesn't do anything because I haven't written code. But what we want to do is we want to add in a new to-do list item. So we could call set to-dos, pass it a new array because that's how you do it in React. And I'm going to do dot 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 of the current to-do list, and I'm going to add a new to-do list item. So I'm going to say text is hi. So if I keep clicking add, it's just going to keep adding hi. And that isn't exactly what we want. We want to take the text of this input box and put it in here. So like on the registration form and the login form, we need to add an onChange listener to this and probably update some state. So let's just say const to do text is set to do text. So import a new state variable, which is going to be an empty string starting off. And when someone types into this input box, we want to call an onChange method and call set to do text of e.target.value. So that'll just take the input that the person has typed into the input box, set it on the state, and now instead of hard coding hi here, we could actually code in to do text. So let's try that out and see what happens. So what is up? Press enter, click it, exclamation mark. Cool. It would be cool to clear this out after we add it in. So we should probably say set to do text of empty string after we've successfully added a to do item. That's not clearing the input box because I think down here we actually need to set the value equal to do text. I think that's why it's not clearing out. So type in something, press enter, and it clears out. Kind of don't like that you can add empty strings, so I think what I'm going to do is check if there is no text, just return, so you can't add empty to-do list items. Okay. So we have our to-do list. We can add items. We can check these, but I think checking them doesn't actually do anything right now. So what we should probably do is add change listeners to this input checkbox, and we need to set the to-do list as set the to-dos as like marked or something. We're not storing this in the database yet either. We could do that in a second. We're not hitting the backend. But let us see if we can just mark these as done and persist that state. So let's add an onChange listener here. And I'm going to say onChange toggle to do. That could be our method name, I guess. And make sure you call that technically, well, do we need E? I guess we do need E. So we actually want to do an anonymous function here and say toggle to do, and I'm going to pass it the index. So this will take an index first. And what we want to do is when you click on one of these checkboxes, run through and update the to-do list to have like a Boolean set to something. So I'm going to say checked false is the default for our to-dos. New to-do. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around over here. I'm just making a new to-do just to keep the code a little bit cleaner. And our new to-do is going to have a check to false and some text equal to whatever the text is. Okay. And then when you do toggle to-do, we want to basically loop through the to-do list, find the to-do that was at index of whatever, change checked to the opposite of what it was, and then save that to-do list again. So I could say basically const I think I just do this. New to-do list is equal to a list of to-dos, and then new to-do list of index dot checked is equal to the opposite. So I'm just going to basically take this and negate it. Let's grab this whole thing, put it here, negate it, save the file, and then finally you want to say set to-dos and pass it that new to-do list. So I think this should work if I click on this and like add some stuff in. And just to verify, if I go into my components and if I go, let me close my Chrome terminal down here. If I go down here for to-dos, we see that we have 4 to-do list items, and checked is true here, and it is true here. So as I click through, notice that the true is changing. All right, so at this point, it would make sense that as you add new to-do items and as you toggle to-do items, you persist that to a database, right? So I think at this point, it's a good idea to start working on a new endpoint where we can save those to-do items for our user. So let's just go here and let's just go to the register component and take that fetch code real quick, because we're going to be taking that post stuff. So if I go to to-dos, I'm going to make a new function called persist. That's all it's going to do, just persist. And that's going to make a request to our backend, and it's going to pass in our to-dos. So instead of username and password, we're going to pass in to-dos. It's going to hit a to-dos endpoint with a post request. And we need to make sure we import handle errors. So let me import that. Although I don't think there would be errors. So let's just not do that for right now. Let's keep it simple. We don't want to change the history, and we don't care about catching any errors because there probably shouldn't be. Alright, so basically when someone clicks on, for example, this checkbox, or when someone adds a new to-do item, let's start with that, we want to call persist. Okay, so persist is going to actually send the current state of our to-do list to our backend, and our backend is going to save it. So we need to, first of all, our backend is going to be secured, so we need to pass in those username and password inside a authorization. And we could just do basic auth here. So I think you do basic. And typically you base64 encode your stuff. We could add that in later. I just want to kind of show you how to save some stuff. Okay. Again, don't grill me because I'm not base64 encoding this. We're going to add that in later probably. But in the header, the authorization header, we can pass in some token of the username and password, and then our backend can validate and make sure that that is correct, and then we could just basically add the to-do list to our users. So let's just first import those. So remember, in the context, we are storing that in credentials. So let's just go ahead and grab those. And what page did we need those in? We needed those in here. Let's grab those. So we could say credentials, and make sure you bring in the context, bring in the context provider, and we want to pass in credentials.username and credentials.password here. All right, so hopefully this works. So if I go to my network tab now, when I type in, or when I type in a new to-do list item, finish this tutorial, and click add, it does a post request to /todos, and down here we sent in our list of to-do list items. And it actually did not contain finish this tutorial, so I think we are missing something. I'm going to start this off with no to-dos just because that was kind of messy. So I'm going to say hello, I'm going to do add, and double check that we sent some to-do items, and we didn't. So for some reason, it's not sending in the to-dos that we expected it to send in. And I think that's because the to-dos have changed here, so we should probably pass to-dos in. So this is one thing I find really confusing about hooks, is that you're trying to access state here, but this state hasn't yet been updated. Although you called set to-dos here and you think that the state should be updated, it's actually not updated until like the next step. So this is going to be sending in the old state of to-dos and not the new state. So one thing you could do is we could use an effect and basically put that effect on to-dos and just make this request every time. So let's just try doing that and see if it works. So use effect. It's going to be a method that is going to be invoked whenever to-dos changes. Okay. So whenever to-dos changes, we're going to then do this request method. So we don't need to call persist anymore. We are instead kind of adding a watch to to-dos, and this is complaining about something. I don't even know what this is complaining about. It's underlined in yellow. But my tooltip is not telling me what's up, so let me go to problems. Let's see. Use effect hook, missing dependencies, credentials user. Oh, so whenever the credentials changes, I guess I need to pass that in too. Anyway, let's see if this works or if this just breaks everything. Let's do a hard refresh. We're getting some errors in the console. So it tried to, right off the bat, send in a to-dos post request. So maybe that is not what we want. Maybe we do want persist. Let me go back. Let me just stick to what I was doing and just have this pass in the new to-dos here. So pass in the new to-dos, and it's a responsibility of this to pass in the new to-dos. So I'm going to say new to-dos is equal to this. And please just comment if there's anything that you think I could have done differently, because yeah, I'm always looking for feedback to become a better React developer. Anyway, let's try this. So if I type in hello and press enter, it tries to do a post request to the endpoint. If we go to the post request, we are sending in our to-do list information. So now we're to the fun part. We don't have a... Oh wait, also I want to show that the username and password should have been sent as a header. So basic Cody and 1 2 3 4 5 6. All right, so let's make a new endpoint called post at /todos. And what we're going to do here is we are going to first get that username and password from our authorization token. So I'm going to say const basic, const authorization is equal rec.headers. And that'll give us the entire string here. And then we want to split this into something we don't care about and token, I guess. So authorization.split on an empty string. And then we want to split the token yet again into username password equals token.split on this. So we're trying to do authorization right now. Anyone could hit this endpoint, but we want to check what user actually hit the endpoint. So if someone hit with the username and password that doesn't exist, then we want to send back an error. So let's just go here and copy this code because this is very similar. So we could say if find a user with username, and if it doesn't exist or the passwords don't match, then we return invalid login, right? And then otherwise, we probably want to persist that to-do somewhere. So we could just say find a to-do item. So I'm going to say const to-do, or to-dos is equal to, we haven't created a to-do schema or model yet. So with Mongoose, let's go up here again, and let's make a new schema. Okay, what's going on here? Let's make a new schema called to-dos. So to-do schema, and that is going to take in a I guess you could just call it taking a to-dos of which has an array. I think in Mongoose you could do this. So it could be an object, an array of type objects of checked is boolean and text is string. I think you can do this. At least I remember seeing something like this in the docs. And we're going to be using that to-do schema. It's complaining about an error somewhere. Down here. Let's comment that out for right now. Alright, so when someone makes a post request and sends in their to-do list items here, what we want to do is we basically want to take that array that they sent in and persist that. So let's first check if the user has a to-do. So I could say find one. We probably want to have a username ID. Like we could say username here, or we could say ID, a user ID. The choice is yours. It's probably better to have a user ID here. So let's say user ID. I think I could say like object ID maybe. I don't know, we'll have to figure this out, but I'll say string for now. And we want to basically find the to-dos where the user ID was equal to user._ID. So this is like a Mongo ID that's given to you when you create records. So we can just kind of try to find the to-dos that matches that user ID. And if there isn't one, we could probably create one. So await todos.create user ID, user._ID, and then to-dos would be an empty array. I think I need to do exec on this. I don't know, but that's what I had to do last time. So let's do exec on this, and then on the create, I don't know if we need to do exec. So if there is no to-do, so the user is the first time using this application, they try to persist for to-dos. We don't have any, so let's just create some new ones, and we could actually pass in the to-dos here. So I could say const todos is equal to rec.body.todos. I'm sorry, not rec.body.todos, just rec.body. So this should be the array of todos items. So todos items, and we want to persist that. And then otherwise, if this already exists, we could just say todos.todos is equal to todos items, and then todos.save. I don't think I explained that too well, so let me just do a real quick recap. We have a new endpoint where you can do a post request to /todos. We basically grab the authorization header from that request. We get the username. We fetch that from the database. If the username doesn't exist or the password passed in doesn't match the username that we expected, we send back an invalid unauthorization error. You know what? I don't. When to use 401 error status. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. So 403 should say invalid. Should say invalid access or something. So that's like someone is actually trying to change and access an endpoint with a bad user information or a bad password. So we'll get back a 403, and then we try to fetch the to-dos where the user ID matches the user that is Cody. So if we don't have any, we create a new one. And if we do, we just update to the to-dos and we save it. So let's try this out. I hope this works. I don't know. Let's just type in a new to-do and say like hello world. Click save. It is pending. And that's because we haven't sent back. So I'm going to say res.json to-dos. Let's see if that works. All right, so we get back, what do we get back? We get back a list of all the to-do items. All right. Well, we got back null. Awesome. Let's see if that works. So type in some stuff, do the request, we get back message success. There's probably a way in Mongoose to get back like the raw to-dos. I'll just send back what was sent in. That's typically what you do. Or send back the actual model. Anyway, what I'm trying to do is persist some stuff. So if I were to do this and add it, if I go into Mongo now, so I say Mongo show DBs, use to do, show collections. We have a to-dos collection, so I can say db.todos.find, and that'll give us back all the to-dos, and we want to find one where the user ID, I think we have a lot of duplicates here, so we might have to fix this. I think there's something I'm doing wrong with object ID, so I have to figure that out. How do I clear? Do I just do a delete? Nope. Empty? Clear? Clear collection. Mongo. Remove? Remove needs a query, okay. So I just need to pass in an empty string. So that will remove all the to-do items so we can start fresh and just see if this is working. So if I type in something, click add, we are then creating it, and the next time we do it, we shouldn't have to redo that, okay? So it should just add it. So if I type in something else and do it, I think it's adding 2 items now for some reason. Yeah, we have 2 items in the database. So something is not working as I think it should. And I wonder why that is. So basically find where the user ID is equal to the user ID. If if we found it, we really just want to persist it. Maybe there's an update. Maybe we got to do a Mongo update versus save. I don't know. Probably doing something wrong here. Save document. Collection.save. Products.save. Oh, let me go Mongoose, not Mongo. Mongoose. Yeah, so you get the model, you set the field, and you save it. You already have the object in your client coder and retrieve. Okay. Okay, so I'm not sure what is going on here or why it's creating two objects. Unless maybe I'm just reading this wrong. Maybe this still is one object. Let me copy this. And then go to JSON viewer. Yeah, so we definitely have two JSON objects, which is not what we want. And I think it's related to this ID here. So I think Mongoose query by object ID. I think there's something special you got to do when you're trying to query by object IDs. Yeah, you got to import this stuff. So for some reason, I don't know why they didn't just make object ID strings, like it's this own special thing. But when you're doing a query based on Mongo IDs, you have to basically do this. This one's fine, but I think the issue is here. This is, I need to say new object ID, and then I need to pass it the user ID, I think. Let's try that. Let's start fresh, remove. Let's go back to our UI. Let's add in some stuff. Click add, do a find. Let's open that up. And then let us type in some more stuff, do a find. And we got back 2 items yet again. Did we? Let me just double check. This code is very hard to understand. So yeah, there's definitely 2 items there. Yeah, there's something I'm doing wrong. I think this probably needs to be like object ID instead of string. So Mongoose set object ID. I think there's ways to do like relationships in Mongo or Mongoose as well, but I'm not interested in doing that. I guess I should put the keyword schema. Object schema dot object ID. Yeah, I think you just do this. So to do schema, Mongoose schema. So I think I can just do this, and then I can use that. Okay, so let's read this. In Mongoose, the object ID type is used not to create a new UID, rather it is mostly used to reference other documents. Here's an example. A product references a category with object ID. As you can see, it wouldn't make much sense to populate category ID with an object ID. However, you must nicely named, what is this? I don't even know what this is. So I think I could just put this here. Let's just try it. And hopefully it works. You know, I have it imported, so I should just be able to do that maybe. So let's do our move. Let's do a find. I don't know what I'm doing, I'll be honest with you all. Let's add some stuff. Add some stuff again. And How many items are we getting? Are we still getting 2 items? Probably are. I gotta start fresh. There's too many to-dos. I can't keep track of what's going on. All right. So I'm gonna add one called hello. I'll do a find. And then I'll do one that says bye. I'll do another find. And we're still getting back 2 items. So I really don't understand what is going on here. Because we have 2 objects with the exact same object ID, which I didn't think was... No, they're not the same. Okay, so it keeps making new objects. Yeah, why is this happening? Create user ID. All right, let's just do here. It must be hitting this multiple times. We are here. So let's delete that, do something, and then go to my node. It says we are here. If I do it again, it keeps printing out we are here. So it's almost like it's not finding this correctly. We have the user object, but when we do the query, for some reason it's not finding that, and I don't know why. Yeah, it just keeps printing out nulls. Alright, I must be doing something wrong with my query. Mongoose find one by user by object ID. I can't use find by ID because that's actually trying to find like the... Okay, let's... I don't want find by ID. Find by ID. Find one. You don't have to parse your ID. Is it possible? Okay. Why is this so complicated? It's because I probably should have read through the docs before I did this, right? Alright, so Twitter ID, stuff like that. Alright, so we have a schema, and this has a Mongoose schema object ID, which I could probably go up here and make sure I'm using that just in case. And then down here, he is trying to do some stuff. Find one, all users, exec. I'm kind of stumped. I'm really stumped. I don't know why this is like not working. So we are here, to-dos is null. We are here, to-dos is still null. So the issue is definitely with like find one is not this one. Find one is not finding the user ID. So maybe this is already an object ID. Probably is. So I don't know, I could try doing this. Maybe that'll give me what I need. Nope. Well, that's awesome. Alright, so I am trying to figure out why find one is not fetching the object with my user ID. Alright, the user ID is ending with 984 every single time, and when I do a query to say find me one that has a user ID equal to this user's user ID, it's returning null. Find one using object ID Mongoose. Oh man, why is this so hard? Find one, ID is mid. Because the query finds the doc in the shell. It means that the type ID in the document is actually a string, not an object ID like Mongoose is expecting. To find that doc using Mongoose, you have to define ID in your schema for story as that. In MongoDB, your query would be this. Okay, that's what I had, okay? I had, I mean, this should be a user ID. I might be doing my find. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Okay. Mongoose find one. Let's go back to the docs and figure out what's going on. So find one. Man, sometimes coding is just so frustrating. It's just so hard to like do something simple. Like I'm just trying to find. Oh. Bro, it's because I'm trying to find a user with the user ID when I want to find the to-dos. Oh my gosh, I think that's the issue. So the first time we do it, we get null. The second time we do it, we get back. Oh, fudge. Alright, that was our issue. A little typo. I was trying to fetch from users when I was supposed to be fetching from to-dos. That sucks. Oh my gosh. Alright, let me start fresh. I don't even know where I'm at right now. Sorry, I'm just frustrated. That sucks. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I am just going to refresh the page. I'm going to go ahead and make a request. It says like hello world. I'm going to click add. And that should have added my to-dos. And I'm going to add another one that says goodbye. Click add. That should have added another one. And what I want to do is when I refresh my page, when I hit this to-dos page, I want to basically fetch my to-dos from another endpoint. And hope this works. So let us just go ahead and add an effect. So use effect. Oh my gosh, can't type. I think this tutorial's been going on for too long and I'm starting to get brain fried, so I really should just take a break, but I want to finish this. So when this component first mounts, I want to do a GET request to my to-dos. I'm going to pass that authorization, and then I'm going to get back some data here. So I'm going to say response, and then return response.json. Let's just do that. I'll just let it complain. This linter is annoying. So we don't have a to-dos endpoint, okay? So let's go to our server and we're going to add one. So it's going to be kind of similar to this one. I'm just going to copy and paste all this code and modify it. So get request on to-dos is going to again split the authorization, get the user, find the user. If the user doesn't exist or the password's bad, send back. And you could do express middleware that does all this so we don't have to keep on duplicating this logic, or just do a helper function. But I just want to get this kind of done for right now. So this is all the auth, and then we basically just want to find the to-dos based on the user ID that was passed in, and then return them. So return, I'm going to return to-dos. You know what, not return. I'm just going to say res.json to-dos. So now if I refresh the page, if I look at the to-dos, I can't speak anymore, we get back all the to-do items, okay? So we actually got back a user ID in here. We don't care about that. So let's just do to-dos of to-dos. So kind of confusing. I'm just going to do this. So refresh the page. We get back two to-do items, hello world and goodbye. So now let us make sure we put that somewhere. So we need to make sure that we actually put those to-dos inside of our state. So I'm going to say set to-dos of to-dos, and yeah, we have IDs now. What's this complaining about? I'm missing a parenthesis. All right, so hello and goodbye. We got those two things when the app loaded. So you saw that, it got those back. You can add in some new stuff and refresh the page and we get those back. Now we want to basically, when you check one of these, we probably want to persist as well. So let us, you know, I don't know why there's object IDs attached to these to-do list items, but I'm not going to look into that. I guess Mongo just adds them by default, so whatever. Anyway, when you check on stuff, you want to do a toggle to do, and then again, we can call persist. So I'm gonna say persist new to-do list, and hopefully that works. So get our to-do list items. I'm gonna check hello world in this one, refresh the page, and that is not working. So let's figure out why that's not working. If I click on the checkbox, all right, I took a little break and I'm coming back to try to finish this up. I have my child playing down here, so if you hear some noises, it's probably her. So I think where I left off was I'm trying to like persist the to-dos as I click on things, and it sends this. All right, so the issue is it still says checked false in all these, so I think that is the issue. And let's see why that would be the issue. Index. All right, so it should be negating it and then persisting it. New to-dos. All right, let's just do a hard refresh and see what's going on. So if I click on hello world, if I look at the React component and go down or go to my state, it says checked true, but then if I go to my network tab, what we are sending to the backend, well, that's a response. What do we send to the backend? We send checked true. And then we get back checked true. So I think it's persisting correctly. Let's refresh the page and see if that's coming in. Oh, my bad. So we're probably just not setting a value to it. So if we get, when we get back our items, checked true is here. So the first one is supposed to be checked. Hello world is supposed to be checked, but it's not. And I think that is because on this input box where we have the checked, I think there's like a method that's called checked. I'm not too sure about this, so we're gonna see. To do dot checked. So let's see if that works. Okay, so there you have it. When the to-dos component loads, it's going to set this input box to checked or not checked based on the value of to-do.checked. So now as I check different things, those get persisted, and if I uncheck them, those get persisted as well. So we are pretty close to wrapping this up. Let me close some of these things. By the way, sometimes it's good if you find yourself like getting stuck in small little bugs, just take a 20-minute break, go drink some water, go exercise or something, and come back fresh, and everything just seems a lot easier to manage. All right, so we did the register endpoint, we did the login, we did the getting to dos, posting to dos. This doesn't work anymore because we deleted that. We don't need a React router. I think we understand how that works. Let me unpin this. So the last thing I want to do is like, I guess, filter out to-dos that are done. And we could do that by doing like a computed. So instead of just hard coding to-dos here, which is grabbing it from the state. We could probably do some type of like a function that does this. So I could say get todos. Alright, so we're going to do a function that basically just returns the to-dos here, and we can, that gives us more flexibility to like do filtering and stuff. And there may be performance issues with keep on calling this function, but this isn't a this isn't a performance tutorial. This is just get it done and then come back and do it better and refactor it to make it better. Alright, so let's say there's like a drop down, right? You want to drop down to be able to view all the ones that are done and view the ones that aren't done. So we could add, let's say above all of these, we could add a select box, and this could have options, and the option could be completed. I think that's how you do it. I guess we'll find out. That's not how you do it. So how do you do select box in view or in React? Let's see. I'm running out of time. My daughter's getting mad. So an example of a select box. We have options with values, and this is what should be displayed. So uncompleted value. I mean, this is how you do it. So I'm not sure why that is not showing up. Let's see, we're getting some errors in our console, and it's complaining about options cannot appear as child of select. So I think it's called option and not options, and I wish I had a linter set up to tell me. I guess options is a correct HTML thing, so select option. I really need to double check my code when I write it. I think that's an issue I'm having. Alright, so it starts out as completed and uncompleted, and what you could do with the select box is I think you could have an on change and basically change the filter that we're going to use. So change filter. So let's add a method called change filter, and we could have the filter come in like this. And well, let's pretend that we have another state variable here that we're going to use for filtering called filter, and set filter equals use state completed uncompleted. How about that? It's going to start off as uncompleted, and when you change the select, we're just going to say set filter of filter. New filter. I'm going to change that to new filter because I do have filter declared up top. Okay, so now I think when I change this to uncompleted, we should see that state change, I hope. I think it actually complained. What's going on here? Let's change this. Oh wow. This synthetic event is reused for performance reasons. Native event. Yeah, I don't know what that means, so I guess we'll have to look into that because something looks like it's messed up. But anyway, as I'm changing this from completed to uncompleted, I'm noticing that this change filter is not actually, maybe it's not getting called. So let's go ahead and print that out and make sure that when we change the filter, it's actually getting here. And let's print out what new filter is. Synthetic event. So I guess this needs to be like e.target.value. So I'm going to do this. e.target.value. Completed, uncompleted. So it looks like it's working, except for I think I probably have, yeah, I have the value duplicated here. So make sure I put uncompleted there. So anyway, I have a drop down, and when I change from completed to uncompleted, I want it to filter out this list to show me the ones that are completed or not. So basically, I could, in my get to-dos, I want to do a filter on this array. So in ES6, you can do filter, and then I could say to-do, and give me all the to-dos that match a certain criteria. So if the filter is equal to completed, then we only want the ones that are checked. Otherwise, we want the ones that are filter.checked or filter.not-checked. I guess that's how you do it. Except for not filter. I need to call it to do. So if filter is equal to completed, then I need all the to-dos that are checked. If it's not equal to completed, I want all the ones that are unchecked. So as I click on these, notice that they actually disappear, and I can go from my uncompleted to my completed tabs like this. Hello world. That's kind of weird. Not sure what's going on there. It's probably checking the wrong ones. I think I'm going off of index, and I probably should go off of ID. So if I were to change this to an ID, and instead of doing index, I could say the key is to do _.id, like this. So the key is to do _ID, and I want to basically toggle the ones that have the matching ID. So I'm going to change this to ID. And I want to basically find, so new to do list.find to do of _ID is equal to ID. And I want to say checked is equal to basically this again. So let me just go ahead and do that. And I'm going to pull this out so it's a little bit easier to understand. So basically, to do item is going to be that whole thing, and set to do item equal to the opposite of to do item checked. So I think this might work better than before, hopefully, or it might just crash my app. Let's see what happens. All right, completed, uncompleted. So if I complete those two, I have all these. All right, so that's working much better than it did before, because we're actually using the ID of the items and not the index. So I don't know if this is the best way to do a to-do list, but it works pretty well, I guess. Now the only thing that we need to do now, you know, I think that's actually pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna wrap this tutorial up. I think I covered a lot of stuff. One thing I wanted to show, you know what, we don't have a way to log out, so I think we should probably do that. Let me go. And inside of app, I want to, you know, not inside of app. I want to do inside of main or welcome or whatever. Let's add a logout button up here. So if we are logged in, then we want to have a link or a button that basically logs us out. So I'm going to display a logout button if credentials is set. And if you click it, I want to log out. So what I could do is just add a logout function here. So const logout is equal to a function. And in this case, if we click this, what we could do is basically set the credentials, which we can pull from the context here. So set credentials, and we could set those back to null. I think this should work. If not, we'll probably debug it. All right, so if I log out, you know, before I click that, let's go back to here. Let's see if I log out, what happens. Okay, so it went back to this page. And then I can log back in as, let's see, Cody, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, log in, and all right, let's go to my network tab and figure out why that didn't render out my to-dos. So I should have gotten all my to-dos rendered out here. Oh, I know why, because they're all uncompleted maybe? Oh, wow. So that was a little bug. Let me show that again. So if I logged in as Cody and I go and type in my password, it redirects me to this thing, to this view. I get my to-dos. They're all checked as true, so they should all be showing up under this completed. But for some reason, they are not showing up. So let me go to React, and maybe there's something that I'm missing here. So go to to-dos. We have all these. State is uncompleted. So for some reason, the state is uncompleted, and I think it's because I need to set the default value of this. So I think there's a way to say value, and I could say filter. Maybe it might be a default value. All right, so when the app loads, let's see if that helps at all. Uncompleted. State is uncompleted. Go back to completed. There we go. So let me just add some. I need to do this and also this. Go back uncompleted. So I got these. So let's try again. Let's log in as a different user. So I'm gonna say Bob 1 2 3 4 5 6, and I'm gonna make some new ones. So 1 2 3 4. I'm gonna check 2 and 3. There's like a bunch of, I don't know if these errors. Yeah, I don't know if the error is old or what, but I thought I checked those. Did I not check those? 2. Well, that's kind of strange. Uncompleted, check 2, but it's checking 1 for some reason. So why is that happening? Okay, so these don't have IDs on them anymore, and I don't know why. So it would probably make sense that when we create the to-dos, we give them a unique ID. I don't know why they're not stored with unique IDs and they were before. So that's interesting. All right, so for some reason, I think we need to add unique IDs to these. So one thing we could do is just import a library called UUID. One of them, I don't know if this is the one it's called. I think so. Okay, so npm install save UUID. And then we can import this up here. And basically, whenever we add a new to-do, we just want to create a new UID. There's probably a way to do this in the backend with Mongo or whatnot, but let's just do this. So when we do add to-do, I want to give it a unique ID of UID v4. And on my server, I think I should just store it, but it might make sense to go to my model here and give it an ID of string. I'll call it to-do. Yeah, I'll call it ID. And go back here, and I'll give this an ID like this. And I do think we are doing something like this. So let me give these unique IDs. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to remove everything. I think there's also users I can remove. So let's remove users, and let's just start fresh. So log out, refresh. I'm going to go ahead and to-dos filter is not a function. Say what? I think this is because this is returning nothing. Why is this return? Let's see. First of all, maybe I didn't save something, but it shouldn't even, yeah, I forgot to save something. To do, oh, okay, I have this hard-coded. Remember that stuff I hard-coded in an app to make it so that we're always logged in? I don't want that anymore. Let's get rid of that. So I'm gonna make a new user, Cody 1 2 3 4 5 6. We can start adding some items. I can complete one, and it crashes. Cannot read property checked of undefined. So what's going on here? Okay, so the issue is that underscore that I left around. Let's try this again. Log in, Cody 1 2 3 4 5 6. I'm gonna check 1 and 4. And now we have it. So we log out and make a new user, Bob 1 2 3 4 5 6, and now we have a completely different list of things. All right, so yeah. I think that's all I'm going to do in this tutorial. I'm not going to spend time doing styling because I don't like doing styling, and I just want to focus on the JavaScript side of things for you all. I think there's some stuff I could do to clean this up. Like I could pull out these URLs to constants. There's a lot of stuff I could do, but I am getting kind of tired and I don't want to come back to this tomorrow and try to refresh my memory. So I think we covered a lot of good stuff. There's probably a bug. I hope there's no bugs in this, but I'm sure there is one. But we have the ability to log in as different users, and you'll notice that they all have their own list of to-do lists, items that are completed or not completed. At some point, it might be good to be able to delete these, which is probably just a different Mongo call. Just grab the item and call like .remove on it. But yeah. I think this was a good overview. We covered a lot of different topics here. We covered, again, doing authentication, using basic authentication. I'm not fully doing it. You're supposed to base 64 encode this stuff. Yeah, I don't know. If you have any comments or suggestions to my tutorials, leave a comment below. But I think this was a good overview of getting started with the to-do list. I gotta watch my kid now, so thank you all so much for watching and have a good day.